All right, let's look at number 2 now. Preliminary article number 2 says no independent nation, be it large or small, may be acquired by another nation by inheritance, exchange, purchase, or gift. That's interesting. No nation may be purchased by another. Well, immediately, okay, first of all, why? He explains that because, like a tree, each nation has its own roots. That's an interesting image. But of course, the mention of the word purchase makes me think of the Louisiana Purchase, which you'll recall was what the United States, the land that the United States purchased from France. And of course, this would lead to conflicts because you had one nation selling the land of other people to a third nation, kind of like what Arthur Kessler said about the Balfour Declaration. It was one nation solemnly promising to a second nation the country and land of a third. You can't do that. You can't sell or give or acquire someone else's land or country. Now, in the case of the Louisiana Purchase, if you those of you watching can see the map here, you've got, you know, territory which is now the modern day states of Texas, or parts thereof: Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, what is that? Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, parts of Minnesota. I mean, all of this land. Oh, and it even went up into part of Canada, apparently. I'm not sure how that ended up being returned to Canada. But anyway, France sells all of this land, which is inhabited by Native Americans, American Indians, uh, who I'm sure were not consulted about the sale or the purchase of their land. So, one colonial power sells to another this land which neither has a title to. So, of course, that's going to lead to conflict. And, in the case of the history of the United States, led to ethnic cleansing, genocide, and removal of the indigenous people to uh, reservations, those that weren't killed. So this kind of purchasing of a nation, I mean, maybe they weren't nations in the Kantian sense of the Staat. This is the German word Staat. It's like nation state. So they weren't, nation states in the European sense, perhaps, but they were uh, nations in the Native American sense. They were indigenous peoples who occupied that land. So it wasn't France's to sell, and it wasn't the United States to buy. So, of course, that's going to lead to conflict. That's not the way to lay the groundwork for peace. So, article number 2, we see how uh, nations have failed to follow Kant's advice and live up to the precepts that he laid out. Now, I'm also reminded of Sykes-Picot. At the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire is defeated and is then carved up by European colonial powers, mostly France and Britain, but also Russia. And basically you've got these diplomats from these colonial powers. Again, Sykes-Picot, these are British and French diplomats, but as I say, Russia was involved too, and they got a piece. I think they got Armenia, according to this map here, that you can see if you're watching the video version of this lovely podcast. But this was not France's and England's and Russia's to have. There were people living there, and they the colonial powers had no right, had no authority to claim that for themselves and then draw these arbitrary lines and say, okay, these are the new countries. And of course, the effects are still with us today. The Middle East is a very troubled region. I see, Palestine here on this map as well, and it was right in the middle of that. Um, so, more than a century later, we're still dealing with the fallout from that because this preliminary article number 2 was not adhered to, not followed. You had nations thinking that they could just acquire, possess, inherit, as it were, other people's nations. So, of course, that's going to lead to conflict. It's going to lead to war. Going to lead to all kinds of problems, and it will not establish perpetual peace, which is our goal.